The Atlantic Ocean. Formed 200 million years ago, it covers 20% of our planet's surface. This vast blue mass harbors countless living beings, from the tiniest creatures like mollusks and crustaceans to whales, the majestic giants that cruise its waters. In the middle of the North Atlantic, we find a group of 9 volcanic islands. The Azores are a part of the Micronesian region, characterized by a subtropical climate influenced by its oceanic location. The Gulf Stream, located in the North Atlantic, is responsible for warming the water temperature in these islands, making them one of the best destinations in the world for cetacean observation. In these waters, there are resident and migratory species that use these islands as a place for feeding, passage, and resting before continuing their long journeys. With an area of approximately 2,200 square kilometers, the Azores are a sanctuary for various flora and fauna, some of which are exclusive to the archipelago. In the eastern group, we find their largest island, São Miguel. Known as the Green Island, due to its extensive vegetation, it was discovered by the Portuguese in the late 15th century. São Miguel has a pronounced rural character, with landscapes dominated by pastures for livestock and production forests. However, the presence of trails that cross areas of lush vegetation, evidence of volcanism through lakes formed within craters, and fumaroles make it an attractive destination for nature lovers. But many of these lush landscapes are actually the result of human intervention, which has brought with it a multitude of exotic species of flora and fauna, some of which are highly invasive. A clear example of this is the ginger lily. Originally from the Himalayas, it is present in most of the island and poses a serious threat to native flora. Another case of adaptation, although it currently lacks a serious impact on the environment, is the sundew, introduced in a specific area of the island. Thanks to its glands that produce a sticky substance, it captures insects from which it obtains nutrients to supplement its growth. On the island, we can also find unique species like the Azorian bat, the only native mammal of this archipelago. Unlike other bat species, the absence of predators allows this species to be active during the day. Another exclusive species of the Azores is Azorina vidalia, a plant of great beauty and a symbol of the Azores flora. Subspecies of birds typical of this Macaronesian archipelago inhabit its green and misty landscape, adorned by their calls. In the eastern part of this island, we find the Serra da Tronqueira. This area is classified in the Natura 2000 network as a special protection area and a conservation area and included in the Natural Park of São Miguel Island. Serra da Tronqueira preserves the largest areas of the island where native Azorean habitats can still be found, such as laurel forest and peatlands, both of great natural value. This area includes the highest point on the island, Pico da Vara. At 1,103 meters above sea level, and in its vicinity, an extensive area of natural peatlands, the Planalto dos Graminhais, whose capacity to accumulate fresh water is responsible for supplying water to some parishes. At the base of Pico da Vara and occupying the upper zone of the Ribeira do Guilherme basin, as we descend, we find the cloud forest, the humid laurel forest, and some remnants of what was the mesic laurel forest, habitats of great biological richness. These forests have their origin from those that covered the southern coast of Europe in the Tertiary period, in which, after the glaciations, became restricted to the Macaronesian islands and small refuges on the mainland. The extensive deforestation caused by human occupation of the space and centuries of use for timber and firewood has led to the progressive and rapid reduction of space occupied by this forest, the home of a very rare and threatened bird. The Azores bullfinch, locally known as Priolo. Highly sedentary and strongly linked to the laurel forest, it is a species protected due to its degree of threat and uniqueness. With a thicker beak and a larger size compared to its European relative, it does not show a distinction between sexes, with males and females being very similar to each other. With a hearty appetite, this bird includes in its diet flowers and fruits from more than 38 different plant species. For this reason, it moves to higher altitudes to find food. The Priolo feeds on native species in the Azores, but due to the strong presence of exotic species in their distribution area, the bird has adapted to these as a food source. However, it depends on the laurel forest to ensure its food supply throughout the year. With the arrival of spring and rising temperatures, the Azorean holly begins to bloom. This is when the Priolo starts its morning feeding, selecting the largest floral buds from this endemic tree. During this period, it also takes advantage, even though to a lesser extent, of the nutritional contribution provided by the seeds of Clatra arborea, a species endemic to the Madeira Island and considered one of the most aggressive invasive plant species in this area. The ingestion of hydrangea leaves is toxic to humans, but this Priolo seems oblivious to the danger, as it feeds on the tender buds of its leaves, which are now beginning to sprout. Although this behavior is uncommon among birds, the Priolo can regularly feed on ferns, like the button fern, leaving marks on the leaves known as fern stripping. At the beginning of summer, they descend along the stream banks to lower altitudes, where herbaceous plants produce seeds earlier. As the season progresses, their characteristic songs are heard more frequently, accompanied by interactions between pairs, revealing that the breeding season is approaching. Already formed pairs will then begin to build their nests in preparation for egg laying. At this point, the Priolos move to more open areas. Here, they feed on exotic plant species, such as the polygonum, which is of great nutritional importance during this period. Thus, it is easier to spot these birds on the edges of trails, where these plants, with impressive pink inflorescences, are found. The average reproductive success of this bird is less than 2 chicks per pair. During their dispersal, while still accompanied by their parents, juvenile Priolos feed on Lecisteria, a species of exotic plant from the Himalayas, also present on the island. Juveniles of this species, unlike adults, have brown feathers on their heads, which will later turn black. During the 19th century, the Priolo suffered significant persecution for feeding on the flowers of orange trees cultivated by humans. This conflict between humans and birds reduced significantly their population. The loss of their natural habitat is today one of their greatest threats. Systematic deforestation in the past and the introduction of invasive species since the beginning of the island's colonization are the main causes of the population decline. These plants occupy the space of the laurel forest and reduce the Priolo's food supply. The introduction of rodents in their habitat is also a serious threat. Rats compromise their reproductive success by attacking nests and feeding on their eggs and chicks. For these reasons, the Priolo has been the subject of conservation studies and projects. In the 1990s, it was considered one of the most threatened species in the world, at that time being the most threatened passerine in Europe. Thanks to the conservation efforts focused on its habitat, based on studies of its ecology, the conservation status of the Priolo has improved from critically endangered, a category that includes species at the highest risk of extinction, to vulnerable. Currently, with a stable population of around 1,000 individuals, the Priolo and its habitat constitute a natural heritage of the Azores with global value and requires management measures for their conservation. To ensure the survival of the Priolo, it was necessary to restore its habitat by removing invasive species and planting native plants. These plants are produced in specialized nurseries. For the success of these measures, it is necessary to monitor the Priolo as well as evolution of the vegetation and its threats. The support of the local population is also important to ensure the success of these actions. Therefore, environmental education is another fundamental pillar of the work done for the protection of the Priolo. Together, we can maintain this unique treasure of the Azores, the Priolo.